Hello, everyone. My name is Bryan Curtis. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Throughout this course, I've learned that development isn't something that only happens during childhood. It continues throughout our entire lives. We continue growing physically, cognitively, socially, and emotionally from birth all the way through adulthood. Today, I'd like to share two experiences that demonstrate this idea. The first is my own journey of personal growth as an adult. I'll discuss how I intentionally worked to improve my communication with my wife after recognizing a pattern that I had developed over many years. The second experience involves a student I tutor named Arya, an 8-year-old girl who struggled to verbally express her thinking, even though she clearly understood the material. Although these two situations involve people at very different stages of life, they both demonstrate an important lesson that I've taken from this course. Growth happens when we understand development, apply appropriate supports, and intentionally work towards change. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, a spouse, or simply someone looking to improve yourself, I hope these experiences demonstrate how developmental theory can have a real impact on everyday life. So I'd like to begin with my own journey in my own developmental journey. I'm currently in middle adulthood. At this stage of life, I'm balancing many responsibilities. I'm a husband, a father of 4 children, a school teacher, and I'm completing my specialist degree. Like many adults, I often find myself exhausted at the end of the day, and one behavior I noticed over time was that I often respond to my wife with very short answers. If she asked how my day was, my response might simply be fine. If she shared something exciting or frustrating, I'd often respond with one, maybe two words. The problem was that I didn't care. The problem was my communication didn't show that I cared. And I know my wife definitely deserved more than that. As I reflected throughout this course, I realized I had an opportunity to become a better husband by intentionally changing my communication habits. And this became the focus of my self-development project. So, thinking, reflecting, and growing, Piaget's formal operational stage describes adult thinking capable of abstract reasoning, problem solving, and self reflection. Pursuing a specialist degree has kept my mind sharp and engaged. So, and throughout this project, I definitely regularly pause to evaluate my actions and make meaningful adjustments. So, to show. So, one of the most interesting theories we studied was Bandura's social learning theory. Bandura explains that much of our behavior is learned by observing others. And as I reflected on my childhood, I realized I often observed my own father communicate very little with my stepmother. Many conversations consisted of short responses with very little engagement. And I think without realizing it, I had modeled many of those same behaviors as an adult. The encouraging part of Bandura's theory is that learned behaviors aren't permanent. They can be replaced through awareness, intentional practice, and reinforcement. Erickson's stage of generativity versus stagnation also influenced my thinking. At this stage of adulthood, our focus shifts towards interest in meaningful relationships and contributing to others. That helped me realize that improving my marriage wasn't simply about becoming a better communicator, so it was about becoming the husband I wanted to be. So for several weeks, I intentionally practiced better communication. So I would set aside daily time. Um, I created an uninterrupted space each evening to talk with my wife with no distractions and just her presence. Um, I practiced active listening, focused on eye contact with her, make sure I stayed fully present in the conversation. I made sure I asked follow-up questions instead of just short replies. So being curious, asking her about her day, her feelings, her needs. And I reflected daily by writing in a journal. And I also asked my wife for honest feedback and input. I would definitely say meaningful progress was made. So even though it wasn't easy, so especially after exhausting days, so this summer, um, I definitely became aware. Um, Definitely had greater self-awareness. So I became conscious of my habits, of how I had conversations with my wife. So a significant shift, definitely on its own. Um, My wife did notice. She shared that my effort made her feel more engaged and appreciated, which was the goal all along. Definitely room to keep growing though. So this isn't the finish line. So I'd say it's a new foundation to build on with consistency and grace. So even though this project started as an assignment, it became something more meaningful. So these new habits are worth keeping. So continue daily evening conversations, even when the school year will start and become busier pretty soon here. Extend these communication skills. So with coworkers, friends, family, students, and remember that growth is ongoing to give myself a little grace when I fall short. So this project reminded me of one of the most important lessons from this course. Growth doesn't end in childhood. As adults, we are always capable of becoming better if we're willing to look honestly at ourselves. Understand theories like Erickson's, Piaget's, and Bandura's gave me a framework to understand my own behavior and the tools to change it. This is the real value of this work. The second part of my project focused on another person's development. So it focused on Arya. She's an 8-year-old that I tutored this summer. So she lives with her mother, her aunt, uncle, and cousin. Her father works in South Korea, so she's only able to see him every few months. She's very shy and reserved, and Arya had one close friend that I know of, and she tends to keep to herself in most settings. Um, Arya consistently demonstrates understanding of content, but she very rarely elaborates, and verbal participation remains limited, even in one-on-one settings. Um, so Arya, she shows that she knows the material, but she gives very brief responses, very minimal responses. So she just doesn't show the depth of understanding verbally. Um, Her engagement is very limited, so it definitely seems disconnected at times. Very difficult to express her thoughts verbally. So before I turned to rely on theory, prompting strategies were tried. Definitely received mixed results. Um, I encouraged Arya to explain her thinking more fully. I increased the wait time that was given, giving Arya extra moments to just gather her thoughts before responding. Sometimes effective, but most often the same brief responses were often given during our tutoring sessions. So, looking at a theoretical lens, Erickson's industry versus inferiority, Erickson's psychosocial theory identifies ages 6 through 12. So, as that stage industry versus inferiority, children strive to develop competence through skill building and social relationships, and confidence grows when they experience success and positive recognition. So I would say Ari's hesitance to elaborate is not an academic gap, it's a confidence gap. And she needs repeated experiences of success and not just correction of incomplete responses. Um, Looking at a second theoretical lens, Piaget's concrete operational stage. So children at this stage think logically about concrete experiences, but benefit from structured supports to organize their thinking before verbalizing it. So she was given opportunities to use graphic organizers to show visual represent frameworks for organizing her ideas. I provided with sentence stems to scaffold language to bridge the thought and speech gaps. And also I model responses to show examples that will make the expectations, that made the expectations concrete. So over 3 weeks with our tutoring sessions, so each session included a structure opportunity for her to elaborate. So she would see from me model responses. I provided scaffold stems, open questions, and then definitely provided that wait time and praise when um, she was able to elaborate her thinking. So each phase is built on the last, creating a safe, predictable structure that honored Arya's developmental needs while gently stretching her capacity to express understanding. So over the 3 weeks, what I noticed. So in the first couple of sessions, so Arya provided brief responses. It was pretty much consistent with her previous patterns from before. On the third session, she did start using the sentence stems independently for the first time. Over, well, session 5, I would definitely say I saw an increase in more confidence from Arya. And that's where I did remove sentence stems and she started using them on her own to give more thorough answers. And finally, by the end of 3 weeks, the extended wait time did prove critical, and Arya needed extra moments organizing her thoughts before realizing them. So reflecting on this, what did I see work? So shifting from deficit correction to confidence building. The positive feedback and specific praise were warmly accepted, and structured supports honored Arya's concrete thinking style. And the increased wait time definitely unlocked her ability to respond. On the flip side, limitations. So since it was just one-on-one tutoring, there were no peer interactions during these sessions. So there was an opportunity for collaborative conversation, before responding. And modeling was tutor-led only, so with not having any other students in our tutoring sessions, so she did not have opportunities to hear other students, think out loud, and which would definitely add another layer of support. So moving forward, so I know our story is not unique, and many students, are very quiet yet capable, and just waiting for the right support to show them what they know. Um, so just moving forward, ground decisions and theory. So Erickson and PJ provide a framework for understanding why students behave as they do, not just what to do about it. Provide developmentally appropriate supports, sentence stems, wait time, structured success, or non-accommodations. So I'd say they're essential tools. And build confidence, not just skills. When children feel safe to try and succeed, the willingness to engage and elaborate grows naturally. So I definitely say throughout this course, I've learned a lot. So especially through the OD and the SD. Um, Although these two projects, they did involve different people, they taught me many of the same lessons. First, developmental theories aren't just ideas found in textbooks. They provide practical guidance for solving real life problems. Second, confidence often matters just as much as ability. So both Arya and I were capable. We simply needed different kinds of support to grow. Finally, growth occurs throughout life. As teachers, we often focus on helping children develop, but adults continue developing as well. We continue learning, we continue changing, we continue becoming better versions of ourselves. That may be one of the biggest lessons I've taken from this course. And if I could offer one piece of advice, it would be this. Don't assume that behavior tells the whole story. Whether you're working with a child, a spouse, a friend, or even yourself, try to understand what's underneath the behavior. Sometimes a quiet child lacks confidence rather than knowledge. Sometimes a quiet spouse isn't uninterested, they're simply tired or repeating habits they've learned over many years. And growth begins with understanding. Then comes intentional action. Small changes practiced consistently often lead to remarkable results. Some practical strategies that work for me include keeping a reflection journal, asking for honest feedback from someone you trust, celebrating small improvements instead of exact perfection, using sentence stems and modeling when working with children, providing extra wait time before expecting responses, and most importantly, remembering that change takes patience. Whether you're changing yourself or helping someone else develop, meaningful growth is a process. I'd like to conclude with one final thought. When I first started this course, I honestly viewed these projects as assignments to complete, but somewhere along the way, they became much more personal. They challenged me to become a better husband. They made me a more thoughtful tutor. And they reminded me that every person, whether 8 years old or 46 years old, is still developing. Development does not stop when childhood ends. It continues every day through our relationships, our experiences, our reflections, and our willingness to grow. As you leave this presentation, I encourage you to think about one area of your own life where you'd like to grow. Ask yourself what developmental theories might help you better understand that challenge. Then take one small step. Growth rarely happens through one giant leap. It happens through small intentional actions repeated over time. Thank you for watching my presentation. I appreciate your time, and I hope these experiences have shown how the principles of lifespan development can positively impact both our own lives and the lives of those around us.